Just play the damn thing.
So the other day I posted a video sharing with you my all-time favorite thrash metal albums. And if you've been watching this channel for any length of time at all, you're probably aware that I'm primarily known as a hard rock metal guy whose roots are pretty much in that entire era. However, what a lot of people don't seem to know about me is that I actually do enjoy a lot of different types of music well outside of the rock and metal genres. And that list of artists is exactly what I'm going to share with you here today. This is my list of top 12 non-metal genre artists that I listen to very regularly. Number 1, Kenny Loggins. I am a huge Kenny Loggins fan and have been ever since about 1986 when the movie Top Gun came out. Now, granted, the song "Danger Zone" that was pretty much the soundtrack to that entire movie, and that's what that song is famous for. That was definitely rooted in the hard rock and metal genre. But Kenny Loggins is known as the king of the soundtrack, especially back in that era. If you can imagine watching great movies. Top Gun, which is one of my all-time favorite movies, Caddyshack, Footloose, among several others. If you can imagine watching any of those movies without the soundtrack that he wrote to them, would they still be considered the classic films that they become without the soundtrack? I don't think so. And Kenny Loggins is the guy that made that happen. Seriously, he's an absolutely brilliant musician. He's been around for decades, and at 75 years old, he's still as talented as he ever was. Number 2, Enigma. If you're not familiar with this band, this band is a new age band whose music I very much enjoy. I've been listening to Enigma for decades now. Their first album was called 1990 or 1991 or something like that. Their first album is the name of a year, but it's written out in all Roman numerals. But regardless, that was my entry point into that band, and I've listened to them very loyally ever since. All of their music is beautifully written, it is masterfully recorded, and for me creates a very, very relaxing atmosphere. It's also good fucking music. Number 3, I don't admit to this one very often, but it's on this list, and you guys keep wanting to know more and more about me as an individual, so I'm going to share this one. You might be surprised to know that back in the late 80s and early 90s, I was really, really into the rap scene. N.W.A, Eazy-E, Geto Boys, Public Enemy, Snoop, Dre, all that stuff. I was really, really into all that stuff. And I still enjoy it to this day. I've got an entire playlist on my iPhone that is dedicated specifically to, that music from that era. Number 4, Jan Hammer. You might not know who Jan Hammer is because Jan Hammer is really more of a composer. However, he is the guy that wrote the original Miami Vice soundtrack, as well as numerous other things. He's been around he's been doing it for decades now, but he's a brilliant, brilliant composer. His work from that era, like the Miami Vice stuff in particular, it does exactly what it's designed to do, and it just invokes very certain emotions, and it's great music. Number 5, Robert Palmer. You know Robert Palmer, Addicted to Love, Simply Irresistible, Bad Case for Loving You. We've been listening to his songs for decades. It's extremely unfortunate that he died as young as he did. I think he was only about 50 when he died, which is about 15 or 20 years ago now. Amazing singer and an insanely talented artist. Number 6. Back in the 90s, I was listening to all kinds of stuff because, well, quite frankly, the metal scene sucked back then. So one genre as a teenager in the 90s that I was driving around town listening to quite a bit actually was 90s techno. I was listening to stuff like the Crystal Method, the Prodigy, Lords of Acid, stuff like that. I still have all of those CDs that I was listening to back in those days. It's just awesome cruising music, Number 7, Kenny G. Yep, that's right. I love smooth jazz, and I especially love Kenny G. I mean, come on, if you're an American and you don't love Kenny G, I mean, that's about as un-American as it gets. Period, end. Number 8, Dave Koz. Dave Koz, from the same, really from the same genre as Kenny G, is a much lesser known jazz saxophonist by the name of Dave Koz. I first discovered Dave Koz back in the late 90s, early 2000s. You got to take my age into consideration here. I was in high school in the 90s, and like a lot of people who were in high school in the 90s, I enjoyed the TV show 90210. And Dave Koz made a guest appearance on 90210, and that was when I first discovered him and thought to myself, this is really, really good music. I went and checked him out, and I've listened to him ever since. Number 9, Marc Cohn. Marc Cohn's kind of a bluesy, kind of a blues classical type of, type of singer. If you're not familiar with him, I'm quite sure you'll be familiar with his most well-known song called "Walking in Memphis." "Walking in Memphis" is an absolutely brilliantly written piece of music. I love that song. Number 10. Back in the 80s, I was a big fan of the 80s New Wave movement. What the hell is New Wave movement, you might ask? Well, a lot of people seem to ask that nowadays because nobody remembers the actual name of the genre. They just call it 80s, 80s music or 80s hair music or synth music, whatever. But it was, back in the day, we actually referred to that genre of music as New Wave. New Wave bands that I was really, really into and still listen to regularly today. The Cure, Depeche Mode, Erasure, Flock of Seagulls, Information Society, INXS. There's just a ton of great music that came out of that genre from that era. And if you're primarily a rock person and you haven't checked some of that stuff out, you really need to. Number 11, Michael Jackson. So look, this list is being presented to you in the order that it came to me. I can't believe that I didn't think to put Michael Jackson on this list any sooner than I did, because he was one of my all-time favorites growing up. So look, I have 2 original copies of the Thriller album in my possession. I've got one of them is actually framed, hanging on the wall. This one is not framed, but this is an original release. This one was out of my mom's collection when it came out. This is the record that got me into music, period. He's called the King of Pop for a reason. The dude is as talented as it gets. I love Michael Jackson. Number 12, No Doubt. No Doubt are a pop band from the 90s, at least it started in the 90s, early 2000s, that era. Full band, that kind of dipped their toes into a lot of different genres, reggae and ska and, pop and, all kinds of stuff. I mean, they're kind of hard to pinpoint, but they're all actually really, really talented musicians. And really what sold me on that band was Gwen Stefani, because I think she is an amazing performer. She is absolutely electric on stage, and she's got a great voice. I'm not a vocalist, so I can't attest to this, but vocalists that I do know have told me that a lot of their songs, her vocals in a lot of their songs are actually really, really hard to sing. And she makes it sound so easy you'd never know it. And by the way, she does not age. She's in her 50s now? Holy shit. So that's it. That's my list of my favorite non-metal genre artists. I'm curious to hear if any of these may have surprised you. Leave me a comment down below and let me know what artists that you enjoy that a lot of people might not expect from you. Thanks for watching. Adios.